You know, for as much vintage and retro goodness as I get into here on this channel, I've never really gotten back into film. Now, I love the hardware, I love the tactile, physical sensations of using the things and the lenses, and of course the grainy analog photos that result. That's appealing when you finally get them. I first went digital in 2001 thanks to a cheap little Digicam, and its appeal was obvious: unlimited photos and zero development cost. Sure, the second-hand 35mm camera I had as a kid was great for learning photography, but feeding it film and getting it developed sure added up in cost fast. And it's not like dealing with film has gotten any cheaper since then. 35mm stock is now even pricier and less common at retail, and to get the pictures, you're either paying a premium for decent lab results or diving into the mess of developing yourself. But what if you could get the analog film camera experience with the convenience of digital, with some kind of digital roll of film? Well, that's where today's LGR topic comes in. IMBAC Film, a 35mm film cassette with an attached micro four thirds CMOS sensor that converts analog cameras to digital, with a purported universal fit, providing compatibility for all 35mm film cameras, according to its crowdfunding sales page and the packaging itself. Quite a claim and pretty awesome if true, so I had to put it to the test and investigate, because if anything screams modern oddware, it's this. And like with so many niche odd devices, this is one of them that is created and sold by a company that has pretty much made this one line of products, and that's it. It really seems to be just these couple of guys that are running the show at IMBAC GmbH, based in Switzerland. Although in the case of the IMBAC Film, some time before the project was announced, they partnered with Yashica, or at least the people that call themselves Yashica after the brand went away and then came back under the Jebsen Group in 2008. And they've continued to lend the old brand name to various crowdfunding projects, including the IMBAC Film, although I really don't know what exactly they contributed other than the logo on the packaging and within the IMBAC menus. But we'll get back to that because this is also not the first attempt at an IMBAC product. There was also the original IMBAC 35 from 2018, which I also have, or at least I do now because I just got it to compare to the new one. And I remember seeing this back then and thought, oh yeah, that's kind of cool, but clunky, you know? It just looked like a twist on the digital camera backs or conversion kits that you would see in the 1990s from the likes of Kodak. Still cool to see in the modern day with a modern sensor, but it didn't get my attention in the same way that the IMBAC Film did. Man, as soon as I saw these images floating around on social media and photography blogs a couple years ago, I had to see the thing for myself and give it a review on LGR. So I backed the IMBAC Kickstarter back in December 2023, which back then was assigned a July 2024 expected delivery date. Of course, crowdfunding is crowdfunding, so fast forward to January of 2025 and my film kit bundle finally arrived in this fantastic custom packaging. It looks like a gigantic Kodak film roll. It's something I can see sticking on a shelf for display when I'm done. And once you get the top unscrewed and taken off of there, there is the quick start guide all folded up and a little bag of adhesive goodies. Though it's not extremely clear what everything is in there, since the quick starter guide that folds out doesn't really go into any detail about anything at all. And that's fine, it's for quickness. Obviously there'd be a full manual. Well, unfortunately, nope, there is not, either on the website or in the packaging. Which is too bad because there are a number of things in here that could do with some explanation, but thankfully the main event here, the IMBAC Film thingy on its own, is pretty straightforward. It's mostly just a bunch of plastic that's shaped to fit inside of a 35mm camera and keep the CMOS sensor held in the right place in front of the shutter, with the empty yellow plastic casing going where the normal film roll would go inside your camera, and then two plastic rails extending from that holding the sensor PCB and the sensor itself, and a ribbon cable with a connector on the other end, and yeah, you don't see that in a lot of the promo images. And that ribbon is meant to connect to the IMBAC back, or really bottom, I guess, in this case. But yeah, it's this module that does everything from taking the actual pictures, processing them, storing them, setting your adjustments and menus and all that. It's also where the remote shutter button plugs in, and yeah, you don't use the camera shutter alone, it's a 2-button process. And naturally, adding all of these digital smarts means you need a battery and a battery charger, and it comes with both, though you can also charge it with a power supply over USB-C, which connects on the back next to a microphone input. And on the left is that plug for the remote, as well as mini HDMI for video out. And the rest that's in here is mostly mounting hardware and stuff to get different types of cameras adjusted and converted over to look and work the best with this particular camera back, including this wide-angle lens adapter and multiple little conversion rings for different styles of lenses. It's quite a kit, and all of this for only $800 US. I wish I was kidding. And for the Kickstarter bundle I got with shipping, it was over $850 US. Though it is currently on sale for around $500 US, but either way, this is not some cheap to buy impulse purchase, at least not for me. If I hadn't planned this video, I would not have bought it. But hey, pricing aside, I've already paid for it, it's too late, I may as well use it, and fortunately, even though it doesn't have a full manual, there is a video guide available on the I'm Back YouTube channel. And I'm glad it's there because there are several things either not mentioned or not very clear at all in the included documentation, so the additional clarity from the video is appreciated, both in expanding on the lackluster quick start guide on paper and in how it makes it apparent the extent of the sheer jankiness that's involved. It does not instill confidence the more you look at how it works, requiring a good bit more in terms of various adhesives, folding, unscrewing, cramming, and smushing things into place, and just a lot more of it comes down to, close enough. Or, in my case, it was immediately apparent that it wasn't going to work at all. At least with a couple of little point-and-shoot 35mm cameras that I had on hand. It's simply too thick to fit in there at all, so much for that universal fit. But before I went out and got any other cameras, my brother Luke was set to drop by for the weekend, and I asked him if he could bring an assortment of different cameras that he has, since he is very much the film dork in the family, as is probably apparent if you've seen him in any number of different LGR videos and vlogs. And yeah, he brought a good half-dozen different things to try out, and well, not a single one of them worked. And all for different reasons, each pertaining to the shape and size of the I'm Back film device and or the ribbon cable, which has to come out of the bottom of the camera and fold around in a way so that you don't pinch the cable too harshly. Even if we could get this to close, and like we can't even close it because of this, and that is like
the pressure plate. That's why you need to take the pressure plate off.
But it's just attached on all these cameras.
They're not supposed to be easily removable.
Like it's like riveted in place or welded or whatever. And yeah, despite trying all our options for an hour or so with all the different cameras we had from the past 60-ish years, we just had no luck getting this thing fully installed in any of them. The closest we got was just kind of holding up the sensor up to the shutter of a camera with the back open, which gave us an idea of how it would work, and the idea still had promise.
Just duct tape this to the back of it, dude.
Honestly, yeah.
Everything else they're saying to duct tape and Velcro, let's just do the whole thing with duct tape and Velcro. I'll try to, you hit the shutter.
So, here we go. Alright, let's see. Hey, look at that. Look at that. Ladies and gentlemen.
It only took 2 days.
It looks pretty good.
Honestly, not, on this tiny little 1-inch screen. Pretty good. So yeah, I take issue with their claims of being compatible with all cameras. I'm Back has made statements, and those like it repeatedly, and some places on the website still say it. Other places it says 99%, but that still seems high. They should really say something like compatible with select 35mm SLRs and maybe rangefinders, but that would just be accurate and not as marketable. Heck, on that note, the original I'm Back 35 is more universal, as we found out when we eventually gave up and tried that instead. Sure, it's clunkier and heavier, but it's also worked with every camera I've tried, and it feels overall more solid and sturdy in the way I want for a device meant to be used on the go. The IMBAC 35 is a tank, a less expensive one, and it just works. But I knew the IMBAC film still had the potential to be really cool if paired with the correct camera, so I decided to order one of the cameras they showed the most in their marketing, the Olympus OM10, first released in 1979. A delightful little aperture priority SLR that came with this nifty 50mm f1.8 prime lens. Nothing fancy, but easy to use and proven to be reliable with enough manual settings that I can take repeat photos while testing. And to that effect, through the magic of buying 2 of them, I'll be able to take shots with the exact same camera and lens at the same settings on both film and the IMBAC simultaneously. So now that I have a camera that the IMBAC film is pretty much made to work with, setup is simple. The first thing is to remove the pressure plate from the back cover that normally presses up against your film, and then remove any little tiny screws that might get in the way of the plastic components of the IMBAC. And if there are any things that you can't remove or you don't want to, then that's just too bad. You probably have a camera that will not work. And yeah, it's this pressure plate and little screws and other little thingies in the way that were really messing us up with the cameras that Luke had. And then the other big thing that's not a problem on the OM10 but is on a lot of others we've tried is the rear cover. It not only needs to close tightly and make sure that no light gets in, but also it needs to allow that ribbon to get through without bending too much or in a weird damaging way. But hey, providing that all of those variables are just fine, then we are ready to go to the mounting, which begins by screwing the camera into this rail using the tripod mount underneath. Then the dangly ribbon will connect to the base under the camera, and then you slide that into the main IMBAC unit with another little bracket that screws in place to hold that in there. At least kind of in there. It's never really that stationary. Then next you plug in the digital shutter button so that the IMBAC knows when to capture photos, and they recommend tape or Velcro or some kind of adhesive. Then of course you'll need the included battery all charged up, and an SD card, which you provide yourself. And you are good to go. Maybe. There are also those stickers that it comes with the goal of helping you line up the IMBAC with the Micro Four Thirds sensor and the mirror or viewfinder optics of your camera. And no, thank you, I'd rather not stick on anything more. I just lined things up till they visually made sense. Now that it's all hooked up, to take a photo, hold down the power button on the back for about 3 seconds, and then wait another 10 or 11 seconds for it to actually start up. Yeah, this thing is not fast. But yeah, once it's on, you can look at the little 1.5-inch LCD touchscreen to see most of your current settings, and that's about it. Obviously, you can't actually see what you're shooting because the shutter needs to be open to do that, and it's only going to be open momentarily when you're taking a photo. So just press the digital IMBAC shutter button, which will darken the screen and give you a couple seconds to press the film camera shutter button. And if you do that before the back times out and your settings are all good, then hooray, you've captured an okay digital photo in up to 20 megapixels in JPEG or RAW format. Which looks nothing like film, as you'd expect if you've been paying attention and thought it through for even a moment. Because effectively all you're doing here is treating your film camera as a complicated base for your lens of choice. Almost everything else is secondary because the majority of your settings are going to be adjusted digitally on the IMBAC. So obviously the lens takes care of the optics, how things look through the glass, and its focal length, plus the aperture, and of course focusing. Those adjustments are fully manual because there's no communication between the IMBAC and the lens, or anything else on your camera for that matter. And the other settings on your camera, like ISO and shutter speed, yeah, those will affect how much light is coming through to the sensor, but the IMBAC is still doing all of the interpretation of what to do with that light. So let's just dive into some more photo examples here and go over them in depth, as well as comparing them directly to what I captured on film using the other Olympus. Which, by the way, I was using this Kodak Ultramax 400 since I found some on sale. As for the settings on each camera itself, as I've said, I'm using 2 of the same lenses, so those will be set identically, and ISO will be set to 400. And the shutter speed I can't control on this camera manually, not without the manual shutter adjustment doohickey, so I'm leaving it in auto mode, which adjusts the shutter based on light. And for the I'm back settings, the white balance is set to auto, and I have the ISO set to 100 most of the time, as going higher often results in blown out images, at least with this particular camera set how it is. And setting it to automatic ISO results in such wild variability that I did not use it at all. Alright, finally, let's look at some daggum pictures. So we're going to be looking at film pictures first, and then the I'm back photo of the same scene after that for each one of these. And yeah, as you can see here, two things are immediately noticeable. For one, the color is completely different, with the I'm back, at least in this auto setting, defaulting to a much cooler, bluer tone for every single thing I shot, pretty much. And it makes any objects with red in particular look very off compared to real life. The film images are significantly more realistic, or closer to what my eyes actually witnessed in each scene. The other huge difference is the crop factor, the way that the I'm back photos are so zoomed in even though I was taking the pictures right in the exact same spot. And that is of course due to the Micro Four Thirds sensor and physics with the lens and everything else going on. It's just not going to be the same unless you use a lens adapter, which it did come with one. I'll get to why I didn't use it a little bit later on, but as for now I'm just dealing with the cropped in sensor, because largely I just wanted to compare the look of film to the I'm back. And I mean, there really is no comparison in my opinion. Even if the colors were much closer and you got the exposure a little bit more in line with each other, let's just try to do that here in post. Yeah, the I'm back still, to me, looks clinical and just like a flat digital image compared to the film's character. Plus there's the grain, right? You don't get any of that on the I'm back. Not only that, but the I'm back's digital sensor seems to have kind of terrible dynamic range, or maybe it's just not doing any HDR processing I'm kind of used to at this point. And another subtle thing that might not be as noticeable is I can't quite get the focus precisely as sharp on the I'm back setup as I do with just the regular camera and film, which I can only assume has to do with the sensor just being crammed up against the shutter there, making the focusing rings in the viewfinder not quite as accurate with the I'm back. And you know, it makes sense, but it's just unfortunate. I have to kind of play around with focusing and distance to get a good result on the I'm back, and it's really hard to see in the moment because that LCD is so friggin' small. And there are no assists for focusing on the I'm back either, no focus peaking or anything. And that's also why I opted not to use the lens adapter it came with to achieve a wider angle and overcome the sensor crop, because that throws off viewfinder focusing way more, and focusing through that teeny little screen is a total crapshoot. So overall, focusing is enough of a pain that I recommend you take tons of photos and just trial and error your way to a clear one. And I had hoped that the I'm back app might provide a little more functionality, but it is more limited in every way except for providing a larger visual preview and being able to remotely press the shutter and view saved media on the card. But yeah, other than having a larger screen, it's no additional help for focusing, and you can't even change hardly any settings except for resolution, and a few other things that I don't really care about, like all the stuff that I do, ISO, white balance, color filters, etc. Nope, none of it's on this version of the app. But yeah, for the focusing issue, I'm back does have a solution, an upcoming product, the OLED viewfinder, but that's an additional $365 US. Now I'm good, I'll deal with the cropped photos. And another thing it's rather understandably poor at pulling off without a tripod is any scene that is a little bit dimmer, really anything indoors or outdoors in the evening or at night. Because of course the camera is trying to compensate by leaving the shutter open longer. And if you go for a very high shutter speed, then of course you're just not going to get the light that you need to get anything visible whatsoever. And the I'm back has nothing in the way of stabilization, so again, unless you have a tripod, just forget shooting anything at night. And it was while looking at photos like these from the I'm back that I noticed a distinct pattern of dots in every darker scene. And yeah, going back, these same white dots have been in every single photo that I've taken since I got it. Regardless of camera or lens I use, even disconnected from a camera and completely in the dark, those dots still show up. It's not dust. Does the sensor really have that many dead pixels? I mean, it cannot be intentional, right? Because it doesn't look like film, it just looks like a faulty sensor. Oh, speaking of camera shutters being left open, you can actually record video clips on the I'm back in 4K, 30 FPS, and H.264, and the results are not great. Obviously you want a tripod, there's no stabilization, so handheld sucks, but just wanted to show the movement here and look at how warped things get. The sensor, the software, some combination of something going on is just not equipped to handle video with movement in it. And on the topic of iffy results, let's just take a look at those filters that it comes with. Now, I don't know exactly which film stocks from these brands it's supposed to represent, because again, there's almost no documentation, not even an explanation of what color characteristics they're going for, so it's up to you to take comparison shots, with standard being that cooler temperature we've been seeing up to this point, Kodak adding more reddish warmth and saturation, Fujifilm changing the color the most with kind of a greenish tint and tossing out lots of red, Ilford being black and white, and the Yashica, I swear, is the same exact filter effect as standard. By the time I got to testing these, I didn't have much film left, but I do have a couple we can look at. Here's one of them right here of this bank building, and here it is with one of the film filters. I think this is the Fuji one, and what the heck is going on with the clouds? Why are they pink? And here it is without any filters, and that looks pretty good. In fact, compared to the film, I think it looks really close, just with the same cooler temperature and lack of grain structure. Here's another film photograph of one of the many bears in downtown Hendersonville, North Carolina. Again, the film filter I'm back image. Why are the highlights so pink? And you know, while some of these film filtered images can look kinda nice, they all have some sort of weird visual artifacting, whether it's discolored highlights or the edges of certain things glowing in a weird way. And even on photos that do look okay at first glance, again, you zoom in, you look at highlights, things are off. Now, that's not to say that I haven't enjoyed shooting with the I'm back at all. I mean, mostly I haven't, but you know, I've gotten some good results. Eventually, you're gonna get some good pictures, probably. Once you start learning its quirks and what features to adjust to get visuals that are a little bit closer to reality, then yeah. It's just so iffy with things like focus. I mean, getting this flower, I had to take 10 photos to get this one that was in focus. So I just got into the habit of taking like 5 or 6 photos in slightly different settings for anything that I was shooting, and you know, eventually one of them would turn out okay. This is definitely not for the street photographer, I would say. You know, spur of the moment kind of photos, they just don't make sense on here at all. And you know, this is LGR. I'm used to reviewing cameras from 25, 30 years ago, and all those kind of things would be very forgivable on a camera that old. And that's what this reminds me of. Except that this is a brand new thing for between $500 and $900, and my goodness, is this not the kind of experience I expected for that? As for the I'm back film, I don't know about you, but my first thought was, this is it.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't even know that there was going to be this ribbon.
Yeah.
I thought it was just like that, and that seemed to be kind of what it looked like online, initially, to me.
If it was just that, it
Yeah.
would be awesome.
And then, of course, I did discover that there was more to it than that. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess that makes sense. You have to have a battery, and then they put a screen and all this other stuff. But even then, like, once you see this, it still doesn't quite connect in your brain how janky and weird it really is until you start trying to put it into a camera.
Yeah.
And it's at that point that I'm just like, who is this for? Who?
What camera is it for? Like,
Well, yeah, first off, what camera is it for? Because that's taken us forever to try to figure out.
This is the one that is like actually called universal, right?
This is the one that it says it will work with your 35mm analog camera.
There's a lot of those, and every single one we tried didn't work with it.
Yeah. Doesn't say anything about SLRs, and that's exactly what it needs.
Yeah,
It doesn't
or
seem to really work with anything else.
Some like, I mean, they have a Leica setup, you know, that's a rangefinder, so there is some.
Right. It still says in text many, many, many times in many places all throughout their like Kickstarter and Indiegogo and in the marketing everywhere else
On their product.
on the thing itself.
Like, you have to have the perfect camera to use it with.
The right kind of back and the right kind of removable bits and the right kind of not having pieces in the way and the right kind of size.
It's universal if your universe is very small.
Because you have to fit all this in the back of the camera.
Yeah.
Inside of it. And tear out pieces and clip off plastic bits and unscrew things in some cases.
Get rid of
Or
your
like-
pressure plate.
Yeah. It seems like something photographers see straight through as being like, no.
No.
And then when amateurs or whatever, or people that are just casually interested in photography look at it, they're going to be like, ooh, no.
Yeah. Or
Right?
or
Like-
if they're like genuinely enthusiastic but don't know where to start, and they think digital might be easier because you don't have to worry about all the film development and all that, and then they get burned on the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then that's even worse.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, because it is kind of off-putting to use a lot of the times.
I wish it were on pudding.
Jello.
Pudding.
Yeah, do you like chocolate?
Yeah, let's say you have a digital camera, you're used to it, and you find your great-granduncle's whatever camera in the garage. Just take the lens off of it and get an adapter to put on your digital camera. You'll have a much better time.
Some of the appeal could be on the surface to somebody who doesn't know what gives film cameras and film prints their look. And if they think it's just the camera body,
Yeah. No, I mean, it's
like it's not that.
It's the body. The body is the vessel. Like the film itself is the medium, and the lenses are the characteristics. You know, like
the body's going to give you the cool controls.
The
and
body,
the feel of holding an old camera. That's fun in itself, and you don't care at all about film. Like maybe that makes sense.
Maybe it's a stretch.
That's like 3 people.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, that's a stretch, man.
There's a kernel of an interesting idea here.
Yeah,
This feels like it'd be like if you went to CES. This would be a thing you'd see at CES.
yeah.
And like nobody would be that interested in buying it. But man, they would talk about it in their videos.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's about it. We kind of had fun with some parts of it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good way to spend an afternoon getting frustrated. Like, it's hard to talk about it and not just trash it.
Yeah, like it's trash though.
It's a great idea. The execution is bad.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you get the point Luke and I were trying to make there. The Einbeck film really is an appealing idea on paper. We respect the gumption to create such a thing and bring it to life. And for the moment, they seem committed to their ecosystem, offering new accessories like improved ribbon cable designs. The whole thing is a cool idea, but the way it's implemented falls far short of what we expected for nearly $900 or even $500. And no, it's not total trash. That was kind of a frustration of the day coming through there, but I do feel that it's missing the point of film almost entirely. And there's a lot of people that still feel there is a point to film. I mean, there is no shortage of articles, social posts, and write-ups on the resurgence of film photography in recent years. But that begs the question, what aspect of film is attracting people back to the medium, or to it for the very first time even? Because with Einbeck Film, you're not getting the film look. You only get the controls and the lenses, with the latter being the only one of those two things making a visual difference to your photos. And I mean, if that's all you're after, then just use a lens mount adapter and use your vintage glass on modern camera hardware. It's what I've been doing here for the last several shots, if you even noticed. Because yeah, when you pair old lenses with new digital sensors, it's the same kind of digital imagery, just with older optics feeding it data. And yes, there's a case to be made with that for certain lenses, no question. But my point is, if that's what you're after, you don't need the Einbeck to make that happen. You only need a lens adapter, or even better, a speed booster. And those combined still cost less than an Einbeck film kit. Heck, I would sooner recommend the older Einbeck 35, as that honestly does come closer to being universal, since it just jams a sensor, some plastic, and foam up against the back of whatever camera you have, and it feels way more sturdy. Though I wouldn't recommend buying either one due to the price on its own, especially the Einbeck film. It's a fun enough little example of modern oddware, but that's about it. It's a curiosity in pretty much every possible way. Well, this was a costly episode, so I hope it was at least entertaining and ideally informative. I'm kind of surprised that nobody else has made a review video of this yet, at least not that I've seen, and considering it had like 900 backers on Kickstarter alone, I find that a little surprising. But anyway, yeah, I hope that you did enjoy this, and if you'd like to see more camera things, I've covered a lot of them, usually way older. And yeah, there will be more retro things coming here pretty soon on LGR, so stick around, and as always, thanks for watching.